My name is Emily Carter. I'm 30 years old, and the night my mother threw my life into the front yard started like any other shift at the 911 call center. I hung up my headset after a night of emergency calls, drove home tired but calm, thinking the chaos was finally over. I was wrong. I turned onto our street and saw it. Black garbage bags and cardboard boxes scattered across the lawn. My clothes spilling out, my work shoes on the sidewalk. Photos crushed in the grass. My mom stood on the porch with her arms crossed, my sisters beside her, phones up, recording. "There she is," my mom called, loud enough for the neighbors. Our little freeloader finally came home, 30 years old and still useless to this house. Heat rushed to my face as one of my sisters swung her camera toward me, the livestream title bright on her screen. 30-year-old loser finally gets kicked out. My dad stepped forward, not to help, but to toss 2 crumpled dollar bills at my feet. "Bus fare," he said. "Get out, don't come back." I didn't scream, I didn't beg. I picked up the money, grabbed the least soaked bag I could find, and walked past them without a word. An hour later, I was on a bus out of town, my life stuffed in one trash bag, my phone buzzing with laughing emojis from my family. They thought they'd gotten rid of their loser. They had no idea what they'd just created. Before I tell you what I did next, and why, 1 year later, those same people blew up my phone begging me to save them. Tell me what time it is where you are watching from. I want to see how far this 30-year-old loser story will travel. Dad, you always like to pretend you were the quiet one, the reasonable one, the guy who just went along to keep the peace. But this is the letter where I remind you of who really kept that house standing. My name is still Emily, still 30, but now I'm writing from a small apartment with my own name on the lease, not yours. I know you remember the night I left, but I wonder if you remember the one a week before that? The one you thought I slept through? I'd just come off a double at the call center. I was lying on my bed, boots still on, when I heard Mom in the kitchen, her voice sharp enough to slice through the wall. "She's almost 30, Mark. I'm sick of looking at her. If she can't make it on her own by now, that's on her." You sighed, that annoyed, bored sigh you always used with me. "As long as she keeps paying the mortgage, who cares?" you said. "She covers the utilities, the internet, Kayla's tutoring. Let her stay. It's convenient." Convenient. That word hurt worse than loser. I lay there, frozen, as you went on. If she really wanted to move out, she would have by now. She likes having us to fall back on. You had no idea I'd started recording on my phone the second Mom's voice went up. You had no idea that every time you both talked about me like I was a broken appliance you couldn't return, I saved it. I still have the audio where Mom said, "If she does something stupid to herself, that's her problem. I'm done babying her." You didn't even push back. You just muttered, "She won't. She needs us too much." You were wrong about that part. You were also wrong about whose money was holding everything together. Remember the college fund Grandma left me? The one that was supposed to help me finish nursing school before I burned out and switched to 911 dispatch? I found out the truth the day that thin white envelope came in the mail. Past due. My name on a loan I never signed. A second mortgage taken out for family emergencies. But the only emergency was your bad decisions and Mom's pride. I confronted you in the living room, shaking, waving the letter. "Why is my name on this?" I asked. Mom jumped in first, of course. "We raised you, didn't we? You live here rent-free. This is how you help." But you, Dad, you looked me in the eye and said, "You're overreacting. We'll pay it. You owe us. After everything we've done." That was the night something inside me stopped begging to be seen as your daughter and started studying you like a problem to be solved. I walked back to my room, closed the door, and opened a folder on my phone I'd never needed before. Receipts. I added screenshots of my bank transfers, The automatic payments I set up from my paycheck to your mortgage, the electric bill, the internet, the credit card with the family groceries, all under my name. You called me a freeloader and a loser while cashing in my entire 20s. I was the one holding up your life like a foundation you refused to acknowledge. You thought I'd never leave because you thought I couldn't. The truth: I stayed because I believed you'd eventually see me as more than a walking paycheck. You never did, so I turned your own words into kindling. I didn't scream or burn the house down. I just quietly collected everything I'd need for the day you threw my stuff on the lawn and told me to get out. That wasn't the day you cut me off. That was the day I cut you off. Tell me, if you found out your parents had been using your name, your money, your entire youth, and still called you a freeloader, would you forgive them, or would you start planning? Brooke and Kayla, you always said I didn't get social media. You were right about one thing. I didn't understand how you could turn your own sister into content and sleep at night. Brooke, you're the oldest after me, 27 with a ring light permanently attached to your hand. Lifestyle creator, you called yourself. I called it talking to your phone while the dishes molded in the sink. Kayla, you're 20, the honors student baby of the family, the one Mom bragged about at every church potluck. Full ride, straight A, future lawyer, she'd beam, while I was still figuring things out. You two loved that, didn't you? Somewhere between your TikToks and your sibling pranks, I stopped being a person and became a punchline. Remember the series you did, Brooke? Living with a 30-year-old roommate. Episode after episode of you walking into my room without knocking, filming my night shifts on the computer, my takeout containers, my secondhand clothes. POV: your sister is 30 and still lives with mom and dad. You'd caption: millions of views. I watched those videos in the dark, jaw clenched, while you cackled in the hallway because a sponsorship wanted to send you free skincare for bullying me. Kayla, you weren't as loud, but you were just as sharp. You'd roll your eyes when I drove you to your study sessions, post boomerangs of my beat-up car with "Pray for Me" stickers. When your friends came over, you'd introduce me as the backup plan in case you needed rides. Never once, my sister who works nights to pay for this house. The night you all threw my belongings in the yard wasn't your first performance. It was just the first time the mask slipped for the whole neighborhood. What you didn't realize was that your content was my evidence. While you were laughing at your own captions, I was screen recording. Every video where you called me a loser. Every live stream where mom shouted in the background about me being a burden. Every comment from your followers laughing at me. I saved them all in the same folder as Dad's recordings. Receipts. Months later, when my life no longer depended on that house, I made 2 anonymous email addresses and a fake Instagram account with no posts, no followers. I attached those clips and sent them to brands that sponsored you, Brooke. The ones you bragged about at dinner. I didn't lie. I didn't edit. I just wrote, "Thought you should see how your influencer talks about mental health, family, and losers in her own home." I also sent them to the dean's office at Kayla's college when they sent out that big email about community values and anti-bullying policy. Again, I didn't need to add anything. Your words were enough. The same videos you used to prove you were better than me became the reason doors slammed in your faces. When you went live that night and called me a 30-year-old loser, you thought you were documenting my worst moment. Really, you were documenting your own. So here's what I want to ask you, and everyone listening. If your siblings turned your humiliation into a joke for strangers on the internet, would you swallow it for family? Or would you ever so calmly let the right people see exactly who they are when the camera's rolling? Megan Brooks picked me up from the bus station at 2:17 a.m. I was holding one trash bag, the plastic stretched white around the edges, my phone at 5%, my eyes burning from not crying. We hadn't seen each other much since college, but she didn't ask a single question when I texted, "Can I crash for a few days? I'll explain later." She pulled up in her dusty blue sedan, leaned over to push the passenger door open, and just said, "Get in." Megan works at a credit union downtown, the kind of steady job my family always said I wasn't smart enough to get. As soon as we got to her tiny one-bedroom, she pointed at the couch. "Showers down the hall. Tomorrow we talk. Tonight you sleep." The next day, I told her everything. The yard, the live stream, the $2, the loan notice with my name on it. Her jaw tightened in a way I'd never seen before. "Emily, what's your social security number?" she asked quietly. I frowned. "Do you have it?" she pressed. I did. She typed it into her work laptop the next day on her lunch break while I sat across from her with a paper cup of coffee I couldn't taste. "I'm not doing anything shady," she said, "but if they ran anything big under your name, it would show up on your credit report." She turned the screen toward me. There it was. The second mortgage. My name listed as co-borrower. A store card I never opened. A personal loan taken out 3 years ago for house repairs that paid for Brooke's camera equipment and Kayla's test prep courses. "They signed for you," Megan said quietly. "I'm guessing they told the loan officer you were at work and they'd get your actual signature later. Or forged it. Either way, they dragged your credit through the mud." I stared at the screen until the numbers blurred. My 20s. All those double shifts, the skipped meals, the nights I worked sick because we can't afford for you to miss a day. All of it used like it was nothing. "You can report them," Megan said. "Identity theft, fraud. It would open an investigation. They could get in real trouble, Em." I pictured my mother in handcuffs, my dad being marched out of his job. For a second, it felt satisfying. Then another picture formed. My parents playing victims to anyone who'd listen. "She's trying to ruin us, after everything we did for her." The same story, just louder. No. My revenge wasn't going to be a loud explosion. It was going to be a controlled burn. "What happens if I just stop?" I asked. "Stop what?" Megan said. "Stop paying for everything," I answered. "Disconnect my paycheck from their mortgage, close the joint account they use, freeze every card with my name on it." "What happens then?" Megan's lips parted in a slow, dangerous smile. "Then they meet the real cost of their lifestyle," she said. That night, we sat at her kitchen table with my laptop and a cheap printer between us. I logged into my bank and turned off every automatic payment that had anything to do with their address. Mortgage, utilities, Wi-Fi, groceries, gone. I called the credit card company and had my name removed as an authorized user. I opened a brand new account at Megan's credit union with only my name on it. My paycheck moved with me. I filed a fraud alert on my credit. Nothing dramatic. Just enough to make sure no new loans could be opened in my name without a phone call to my personal number. No shouting, no accusation. Just unplugging. The next week, I used the money I wasn't sending home to put down a deposit on a small studio apartment 30 minutes away from the call center. I took extra overnight shifts, the kind no one else wanted, stacked my overtime, and for the first time in my life, every dollar I earned actually stayed with me. Megan slid a cheap spiral notebook across the table. "Write it all down," she said. "Not just what they did, what you're going to do." At the top of the first page, I wrote, 7 letters I'll never send. Underneath, bullet points. Cut them off. Collect proof. Build my own life. When they fall, don't catch them. Make them ask. Make them remember. Then I underlined one sentence 3 times. Never again let people who call you a loser spend your hard-earned money. So here's my question for you. If you discovered your own family had quietly built their entire lifestyle on your back, would you keep paying to keep the peace? Or would you start saying no and let the consequences hit them instead of you. I used to think that house was the only place I'd ever belong. Beige siding, squeaky porch step, the smell of burnt coffee and cheap candles. I thought if I just worked harder, contributed more, they'd eventually look at me and see someone worth respecting. Instead, that house became a classroom. And the main lesson was this: love without respect is just control in a prettier outfit. After I moved into my studio, my life shrank in square footage but expanded everywhere else. The place was small enough that if I stretched out my arms, I could almost touch both walls. But it was mine. My name on the lease. My key in the lock. No one banging on the door, demanding rides or money or explanations. I worked. I slept. I ate freezer meals on the floor for a while. And I saved. I picked up weekend shifts training new dispatchers. I started an online course in crisis communication, the kind of extra certification my supervisor hinted could lead to a promotion. Every exam I passed went onto a growing stack of papers on my desk. Every pay stub went into a folder labeled Emily's Future, not House Bills. Months passed without a word from my family, which I knew didn't mean silence. It meant simmering. I got the first sign of the boil 3 months after I left. A screenshot from Megan. "Is this about you?" she asked. It was a Facebook post from Mom. A dramatic paragraph about ungrateful children and kids these days who abandon the parents who raised them. No names, of course, but the comments were full of sympathy. "You did your best, Linda. Some kids just don't appreciate what they have." I said nothing. Another 3 weeks, and a late-night text came from an unknown number. "Your parents' power got shut off for non-payment," it read. "Are you okay?" It was a neighbor from across the street. I stared at the message for a long time, thumb hovering over the keyboard. I finally replied, "I don't live there anymore. They'll figure it out." And they did, by asking around, by borrowing, by scrambling. But they couldn't figure it out with my money anymore. Revenge at that stage was simple. Not saving people who would never save me. But I'd be lying if I said I stopped there. Remember those recordings? The ones where Mom called me a burden and Dad said I was convenient as long as she pays? The clips of Brooke laughing about her pathetic 30-year-old roommate? The comments where her followers piled on? One evening, I sat on my futon, pulled up the parent Facebook group for Kayla's college that Mom bragged about all the time, and made a brand new account with no profile picture. I uploaded a 30-second clip. Brooke's live stream where Mom yelled, "If she does something to herself, that's on her. I'm done." Brooke laughed into the camera and said, "Sorry guys, my sister's having another meltdown." I added a single caption, "Do your kids talk about family like this?" I didn't need to say who they were. People recognized them. Moms who'd sat next to mine at award ceremonies. Parents whose kids followed Brooke online. An hour later, the video had been shared into a mental health awareness group, into the college's unofficial page. Comments flooded in. "This is cruel. If my kids talked like this, I'd be ashamed. Isn't this the same Linda Carter who gives parenting advice in here?" I closed the app and went to bed. I didn't check again for days. Meanwhile, I kept building. 6 months out, I got promoted to shift supervisor. My paycheck jumped. I started setting aside a separate savings account labeled down payment. Not because I knew exactly what I was going to buy yet, but because owning something of my own felt like the purest form of revenge. Not revenge on them. Revenge on the version of me who believed I'd never be able to stand on my own. Every time I logged into my bank account and saw my balances go up instead of disappearing into someone else's bills, I felt a little less like the loser they said I was, and a little more like someone dangerous, a woman with options. Let me ask you this. If the same house where you were called a loser for years started falling apart without your money, Would you rush back with a toolbox? Or would you stand on the sidewalk of your new life and finally let it crumble? You created that group chat to send memes and gossip and passive-aggressive reminders that I was missing out on family time. For months after I left, it was quiet. I stayed in it, muted, just to watch. At first, it was the usual. Pictures of Kayla's campus, Brooks brand deals, Mom's decorated holiday table. Little jabs slipped in sometimes. A photo of an empty chair at Thanksgiving with the caption, "Reserved for our missing daughter." A shot of Brooks' new ring light with, "At least someone in this house is chasing their dreams." I typed and deleted replies so many times. Then, around month 8, the tone shifted. It started with Mom posting a blurry picture of an envelope from the bank. "Has anyone talked to him today?" she wrote. No one answered. 2 days later. "Mortgage is late again. They changed the rules. Bank is harassing us." I knew they hadn't changed the rules. They'd just changed the person paying. Dad finally chimed in. "I'll figure something out," he wrote. Then, an hour later, a message only to me, not the group. "You know your name is on this, right? If the house goes under, it hits your credit too." My fingers shook, but not from fear this time. I'd already talked to Megan. We'd already confirmed that, because they'd lied and used my credit, it was their legal problem now. "You should have thought about my credit before you took out loans without asking me," I replied. "Good luck." I expected an explosion. Instead, there was silence. Then, little by little, the chat turned from flexes to cracks. Brooke posted less about sponsorships and more about brands ghosting. One afternoon, I got a DM from a girl who used to go to our church. "Hey, isn't this your sister? Her ad for that skincare brand just got pulled. People are dragging her for bullying." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I knew exactly which anonymous email had started that. Kayla's crisis came next, at 11:07 p.m. On a Tuesday, Mom dropped a message into the group chat like a bomb. They took her scholarship. She followed it with a screenshot of an official notice from the college. "Due to conduct inconsistent with our community values." It began. Attached, a complaint about online harassment and videos mocking a family member's mental health. Guess which videos the committee had watched? "This is your fault," Mom wrote privately to me. "If you had just stayed and helped, none of this would be happening." I stared at that message for a long time. Then I wrote back one sentence. "If you had treated me like a daughter instead of content and a paycheck, none of this would be happening." I muted the chat again. 3 months later came the messages from the bank about foreclosure proceedings. I got them too, because my name was on that cursed piece of paper. Only now, thanks to the fraud alert and Megan's help, I had options. They didn't. That brings us to the morning in the hook. 1 year after the night they threw my belongings in the yard, I woke up in my studio to 3 alarms. My phone, my cheaper backup phone, and my work phone vibrating across the nightstand. 6:30 a.m. Mom. 36 missed calls and a text. "Please, you have to save us. They're taking the house. You're the only one who can fix this." 8:30 a.m. Dad. "I was wrong. Please come home. The bank said if you sign, they might work with us." 10:45 a.m. Brooke. "Please, Emily. We need you. My channel is dead. Kayla can't go back to school. And Mom is losing it. Help us. You can't really just watch us lose everything." I stared at those messages while sipping coffee I paid for with my money. In an apartment I paid for with my money. On a couch I bought secondhand with my money. Then I opened an email from Megan with one line. "Foreclosure auction is next week. You're pre-approved." So here's the question I have for you. If the same family who called you useless and threw your life into the yard suddenly begged you to sign on the dotted line and save them, would you do it? Or would you finally let them feel what it's like when you walk away? The courthouse steps were crowded the morning of the auction. Men in suits with clipboards, a few neighbors lurking at the edge of the group, curious. I recognized our old mailman, Mrs. Green, from across the street, and, standing off to the side looking like they hadn't slept in days, my family. Mom's hair was thrown into a messy bun, no makeup, eyes red. Dad's shirt was wrinkled, tie crooked. Brooke wore sunglasses even though the sky was gray. Kayla clutched a stack of papers to her chest like they might rewrite reality if she held them tight enough. They didn't see me at first. I stood toward the back, hands in the pockets of my plain black jacket, Megan at my side. "You don't have to do this alone," she'd said when I told her my plan. The auctioneer rattled off a list of properties before he got to ours. Single-family home, 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, minimum bid. My childhood address sounded like any other asset on the list. When the starting price was announced, a man in a gray suit lifted his hand. Another investor chimed in. The number edged up. That's when I stepped forward. "Bid," I said quietly to the clerk, raising my numbered paddle. Megan squeezed my arm. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mom turn, squinting, then freeze. "Emily?" she whispered, like saying my name might make me disappear. The bidding war was short. Our house wasn't in a fancy neighborhood, and with the market as it was, no one wanted to go too high. I did. Because I wasn't just buying walls and a roof. I was buying the right to decide what that place meant to me for the rest of my life. The auctioneer slammed his gavel. Sold. A strange, hollow silence followed. Papers were signed. My name went on a deed for the first time in my life, and it wasn't as someone's co-borrower or backup. It was mine. When I finally walked over to my family, Mom's face crumpled. You bought it?" she stammered. "So you'll sign it back to us, right? We can work something out. You can move home. We can start over." For a second, I saw the version of myself who would have jumped at that. The girl who would have taken any scrap of warmth, any chance at belonging, even if it meant going right back into the fire. She was still in there, small and tired, but she wasn't in charge anymore. "No," I said, calm. "I bought it for me." Dad stepped closer, desperation cracking through his voice. "We're your parents. We made mistakes, but we're still family. Don't do this. We'll lose everything." I looked past him at the house visible over the tops of cars down the street. The porch where I used to sit after long shifts, the window of the room where I lay awake listening to them plot how to use my money, the patch of lawn where my life sat in garbage bags a year ago. "You lost me a long time ago," I replied. "This is just paperwork catching up." Brooke pulled off her sunglasses, eyes glossy. "We said things for the camera, okay? It was just jokes. You know how the internet is. Please don't be petty." Megan actually laughed at that. I didn't. "You called me a loser to 100,000 strangers," I said. "You used me for views. You used my money for your dream life. This isn't petty. This is me finally believing what you told me. That I don't owe you anything." Kayla tried a different angle. "I'll have to drop out," she said, voice small. "I can't commute from some apartment across town and work and study. You're ruining my future." The old me would have apologized. The new me shrugged slightly. "You'll figure it out," I said. "That's what you all told me, right? That if I really wanted a better life, I'd make it happen." I didn't leave them completely homeless. I'm not the villain in this story, no matter how they'll tell it. I gave them an option. "There's a property manager you can talk to," I said, handing Dad a business card I'd had printed the week before. "If you want to stay, you can apply like any other tenants. Market rent, lease, rules, none of my name. None of my money." Mom's mouth fell open. "You expect us to pay you to live in our own house?" I met her eyes. "You expected me to pay you to call me a loser?" I said softly. "This seems fairer." Then I turned to leave. A week later, I walked through the empty rooms with a contractor, talking about soundproofing and wiring. That house is going to be something new now, a training and support space for dispatchers, nurses, and first responders who don't have anywhere quiet to decompress. A place where people who listen to other people's worst days can finally breathe. The walls that heard my mother call me a burden will hear something different. People reminding each other they're not alone. Sometimes revenge looks like destruction. Mine looks like renovation. It looks like taking the place where I was broken and turning it into a place that helps other people heal. As for my family, they moved into a cramped rental on the edge of town. Word got around about the videos, about the loans, about the auction. Some people still feel sorry for them. Some think I went too far. They don't know about the nights I lay awake wondering if I'd become the monster they said I was. They don't know how many times I almost called and said, "Fine, I'll fix it." But every time I start to doubt myself, I remember standing in that yard with my life in trash bags while my own parents laughed and my sisters streamed it to strangers. I remember the $2 at my feet. I remember thinking, if I get through this, I will never let them own me again. This last letter isn't really for them. It's for you. The person being called a loser because you're not where they think you should be. The one paying bills in a house where no one says thank you. The one who keeps shrinking yourself to fit into a family that only likes you when you're useful. I'm not telling you to buy their house out from under them. I'm not saying my version of revenge has to be yours. But I am saying this. You are allowed to stop funding your own disrespect. You are allowed to walk away from people who would rather humiliate you than help you. You are allowed to build a life that's so solid, they have to come to you and admit what they did. So here's my final question. If the people who called you a burden for years suddenly needed you to survive, would you rush back to save them? Or would you finally choose yourself and let them taste the life they tried to feed you? The villains in this story, Emily's mother, father, and sisters, aren't monsters in a movie. They're the kind of people many viewers sadly recognize in real life. They use her financially, mock her publicly, and only see her value when they're desperate. Their cruelty and arrogance show what happens when ego replaces empathy and family becomes an excuse for exploitation. But their downfall carries a powerful lesson. Disrespect always has a price. Real love is proven through actions, not words. The positive takeaway is clear. Value those who treat you with kindness, protect your self-worth, and never sacrifice your dignity just to belong. My name is Rachel Carter. I was 28 years old the day my mother chose a backyard barbecue over my doctorate graduation. I remember standing in a cramped bathroom stall at Johns Hopkins, balancing my phone between my shoulder and cheek so my tears wouldn't smudge the makeup I'd done myself. Outside the door, I could hear the muffled roar of the crowd, the booming voice calling names, the crackle of microphones. Inside, all I could hear was the blood pounding in my ears and my mother's voice saying, "We already ate, honey." I stared at the text for a full minute before I could even process it. We already ate. A picture followed. A long, folding table in my parents' backyard, loaded with trays of ribs and brisket, people laughing with red Solo cups in their hands, and my older brother at the grill like some sort of hometown celebrity. The caption read, "So proud of you, E, best pitmaster in the city." No, good luck, Rachel. No, we're on our way. Just smoke, meat, and a celebration I wasn't invited to. My fingers shook as I hit call. "Mom?" I tried to keep my voice steady. "You know my ceremony starts in 10 minutes, right?" I could hear music and chatter in the background, the sizzle of the grill, someone shouting my brother's name. "Oh, honey, don't be so sensitive," she said, like I'd just complained about the weather. We're doing something special for your brother today. He booked a city food critic. We can watch your ceremony on the live stream later. I swallowed hard. It's my doctorate, Mom. 8 years. You promised you'd be here. There was a pause, and then my father's voice cut in. Louder, impatient. Rachel, don't be dramatic. Your brother's worked hard too. We can't be everywhere at once. That was the moment something inside me snapped. I looked at my reflection. Cap, gown, honor cords, the life I'd built with no help from them, and realized I had been an extra in my own family's story for 28 years. That was the last phone call I ever made as Rachel Carter. Before I tell you what I did next, and how one decision turned my family's beloved barbecue empire into the center of a public scandal, tell me, what time is it where you are, and what are you doing while you listen? I want to see just how far this story travels compared to the little backyard where mine almost ended. If you've ever been the responsible one in a family that worships someone else, you already know how the small cuts start long before the big betrayal. By the time I was standing in that bathroom, I'd lived 28 years of being the second-choice Carter. My parents built their entire identity around smoke and sauce. Carter's Backyard Barbecue wasn't just a restaurant, it was our family religion. My brother could burn a rack of ribs and my mom would still gush. Look at him, he's a natural. I brought home science fair trophies, full-ride scholarships, and published research. And the most I got was, "That's nice, honey. Don't forget to help your brother at the register tonight." While my brother learned how to charm food bloggers, I learned how to chart infection curves and write grant proposals. While they bragged about E's famous brisket to anyone who would listen, they couldn't remember the name of my dissertation advisor. So no, that phone call didn't come out of nowhere. It was just the first time I truly heard what they'd been saying all along. You will never be our main event. I walked out of that bathroom before I could talk myself into apologizing. The event coordinator was already motioning people toward the line that curled behind the stage. Other graduates clustered with parents and siblings, people straightening one another's caps, fixing collars, snapping tearful selfies under the banners. I walked alone, hugging my file folder like it might fly away. One of my classmates glanced around me and frowned. "Hey, your family running late?" I smiled in that tight, automatic way you learn when you don't want to explain your whole life. "They're watching from home." "That sucks," she said bluntly. "You're the smartest one in the cohort. They should be front row." Her words stung because they were so simple and so true. Have you ever had a stranger value you more in one sentence than your own family has in years? I took my seat, the empty row of chairs behind me feeling louder than the entire arena. When the dean started calling names, I listened to the thunder of applause and thought, maybe this is just how it's going to be. I'll keep doing the work, and they'll keep grilling ribs. Then my name boomed through the speakers. Rachel Carter, Doctor of Public Health, Epidemiology, and Data Science. I walked across that stage to polite cheers from faculty and friends, and zero from the people whose approval I'd been chasing since I could talk. When the dean handed me my diploma case and leaned in for the photo, he murmured, "Congratulations, doctor. Your work is going to save a lot of lives." That was the moment something cracked wider than just hurt feelings. If my research could save strangers, why was I still burning myself trying to be seen by people who didn't even show up? After the ceremony, while other graduates disappeared into the swirl of flowers and hugs, I ducked into a side hallway with my phone. The Carter family group chat was flooded with pictures from the barbecue. My brother in front of a giant banner, "Ethan Carter, King of Smoke." Comments from relatives, "So proud of our star." "Can't wait to come by the restaurant." Not a single message about my degree. My thumb hovered over the keyboard, then dropped. I opened a different app, the one I'd bookmarked months ago but never had the courage to use. It was a legal name change form. I stared at the blank fields, then slowly typed, "New name, Naomi Lane. It was a name I'd scribbled in the margins of my notebooks for years, the name I always thought I'd use someday, when my real life starts. Standing there in my doctoral gown, diploma case under my arm and barbecue smoke practically seeping through my phone screen, I decided that someday was now. By the time the sun set on my graduation day, Rachel Carter was already fading like smoke. I spent the evening not at a fancy dinner or a family party, but at my tiny apartment kitchen table, laptop open, paperwork spread out between a frozen pizza and an overdue electricity bill. Glamorous, I know, but there was something sacred about the silence. No sizzling meat, no clinking beer bottles, no relatives calling my brother my pride and joy while I refilled their iced tea. Just the hum of the fridge and the steady tap of my fingers as I rewrote my own existence. If you've never been through a legal name change, let me tell you, it's a strange mix of bureaucracy and rebirth. I filled out forms, printed affidavits, booked an appointment at the courthouse. Under reason for change, I typed personal and professional identity. What I wanted to write was, because I am done being the background character in a restaurant commercial. I posted one picture from the ceremony on my private Instagram, a simple shot of me in my gown, cap in my hands, stage behind me already half disassembled. The caption read, Dr. Lane, coming soon. A few friends commented with confusion and then excitement. Wait, are we changing names now? Dr. Lane sounds like a superhero. One DM stood out. It was from my grad school friend Jenna, who had moved to Seattle a year earlier to work at a health tech startup. Lane, huh? I like it. Still taking that interview with Northwatch Analytics? I had almost forgotten. Weeks earlier, I'd applied to a position at Northwatch, a company using real-time data to detect disease outbreaks before they exploded. They'd liked my dissertation on foodborne illness modeling and offered an interview after graduation. At the time, I hesitated. Moving from Baltimore to Seattle felt huge, leaving my family's city, my childhood streets, the restaurant where I'd bussed tables since I was 12, terrifying. After that barbecue phone call, the decision felt like oxygen. I messaged Jenna back, yeah, I'm in, completely. The next morning, I woke up to 2 notifications, one from the court. My hearing for the name change was scheduled. The other from Northwatch. We'd like to formally offer you the position of Senior Epidemiological Data Scientist, pending your start date. I stared at the screen and laughed out loud, the sound raw and disbelieving. The universe wasn't being subtle. Within a month, Rachel Carter was a legal footnote and Dr. Naomi Lane had a one-way plane ticket to Seattle. I told my parents in the least dramatic way possible, a short email. I graduated today. I'm changing my name for professional reasons and taking a job in Seattle with a public health data company. I wish you all the best with the restaurant. It was polite, distant, and very unlike the Rachel who had once sent 15-paragraph emails explaining her feelings. My mom wrote back 2 days later, Seattle? That's far. We thought you'd come home and help Ethan expand the business. You know your brother could really use your brains for the numbers side. Anyway, congrats on the degree. We're busy getting ready for the summer festival. Huge opportunity for him. We'll talk later. My father's contribution was a thumbs-up emoji in the family chat. My brother didn't reply at all. If you've ever waited for an apology that never came, you know exactly how that emptiness feels. So I packed my life into 3 suitcases and a carry-on. On my last night in the city, I wrote a letter I never mailed. Dear Mom and Dad, it began, one day you're going to realize that your daughter became a doctor and you weren't there. One day you're going to need my help, and for the first time in my life, I'm not sure I'll pick up the phone. I signed it. Love Naomi, folded it, and tucked it into the back of my journal. It wasn't for them, it was for me. A line in the sand. A promise that I was no longer going to chase people who wouldn't even cross a parking lot for me. When the plane lifted off the runway and the city shrank beneath me, I watched the lights blur and thought, okay, Dr. Lane, let's see who you get to be when no one is calling you just Ethan's sister anymore. Seattle did not care who my brother was or how many trophies he had for his ribs. Seattle cared about data, and that was exactly what I needed. Northwatch Analytics occupied 2 floors of a glass building overlooking the water, all open floor plans and whiteboards covered in equations. On my first day, my manager, a woman with blue-streaked hair and permanent coffee in her hand, grinned at me and said, "We hunt ghosts in numbers here, little blips that tell us something bad is brewing before anyone else sees it. You ready to chase?" I was. I dove into streams of hospital admissions, restaurant inspection reports, social media complaints about food poisoning, and a mountain of other data sources. Our job was to spot patterns, clusters of symptoms in neighborhoods, spikes in ER visits, that could signal an outbreak of something ugly. I loved it. It was like solving puzzles that could actually save lives. For the first time, my value was measurable in something other than how many plates I could carry at once during the dinner rush. Months passed. I learned to love the damp chill of Seattle mornings, the way the city smelled like rain and coffee instead of smoke and sauce. I made friends with coworkers who knew me only as Naomi, the epidemiologist who could stare at a spreadsheet until it confessed its secrets. When they asked about my family, I gave vague answers. We're complicated. One Tuesday afternoon, a notification popped up on my screen. Automated flags from our algorithm. There was a small but notable cluster of severe gastrointestinal cases across 3 neighboring counties. At first glance, it looked like a typical seasonal spike. But the more I zoomed in, the more uncomfortable I felt. The onset times were tight, the symptoms intense, and most disturbingly, the patients all mentioned eating at the same popular local chain in their intake notes. I pulled the restaurant name into a separate query and frowned. Carter Smokehouse, I read aloud. For a second, my brain refused to process the words. It felt like looking into a funhouse mirror. Different region, same script. Everything okay? Jenna wheeled her chair over. I tilted my screen so she could see the red dots on the map. I think we've got a cluster linked to a restaurant chain, I said carefully. Have you heard of Carter Smokehouse? Are you kidding? She snorted. They just opened a location here. People are obsessed. Their brisket line wraps around the block. Why? I clicked through more records, heart pounding faster with each one. Patients describing bloody diarrhea, vomiting, high fevers, lab results trickling in with E. coli and salmonella hits. Because, I said slowly, if this pattern holds, they might be the source of our outbreak. We followed protocol. I escalated to my manager, documented the evidence, and prepared a preliminary report to send to the state health department. It was routine. Except nothing about it felt routine to me. When I went home that night, I couldn't stop thinking about my parents' kitchen. How many times had I watched my brother slap raw meat on the cutting board, wipe his hands on a towel, and then grab a handful of buns from an open bag? How many times had I pointed out the cross-contamination, only to be told, "This is how we've always done it, Rachel. Stop overthinking everything." As the days passed, the dots on my screen multiplied. More hospitals, more patients, more mentions of Carter Smokehouse. The state health department reached out, requesting deeper analysis and all our supporting data. We weren't talking about a few upset stomachs anymore. This was an outbreak. I woke up one night in a cold sweat, my phone screen glowing in the dark above my face. On impulse, I opened the Carter family group chat, the one I hadn't checked in months. The last photo was my brother standing in front of a banner. Coming soon, Carter Smokehouse West Coast Tour. The caption read, "Proud of our boy taking the brand national." My mother had commented, "Nobody does barbecue like a Carter." Staring at that picture, I realized something that made my stomach churn more than any food poisoning ever could. If the chain had expanded this fast, the outbreak I was looking at might just be the beginning. There's a moment when you're sitting on a piece of information that can blow up your own family's life, where every version of yourself tries to speak at once. The good daughter says, call them, warn them, give them a chance to fix it quietly. The scientist says, that's not how public health works. People are already sick. Some of them are kids. The hurt child says, they skipped your doctorate for a barbecue. Are you really about to risk your career to protect them? I wish I could tell you I chose the right voice immediately. I didn't. I spent a week drowning in what-ifs. During the day, I refined our models, built cleaner visuals for the health department, and took calls with epidemiologists who used words like alarming and significant liability. At night, I stared at my ceiling and thought about how many birthday parties I'd worked the grill instead of attending, just to help the family. The decision crystallized the day we got a call from a pediatric ICU physician. He wanted access to our data because he had 3 children in critical condition with the same strain of E. coli, and one thing in common. They'd all eaten at Carter Smokehouse in the last week. I ended that call, walked straight to my manager's office, and shut the door. I need to make a disclosure, I said, hands clammy. I have a personal connection to the restaurant chain. Her eyebrows shot up. In what way? My parents own the original location, I said. My brother runs the company now. There it was, out in the open like a raw nerve. She didn't flinch. Okay, thank you for telling me. That means 2 things. 1, you're recused from any policy recommendations from this point forward, so there's no conflict of interest. 2, I'm going to ask you a question as a human, not as your boss. Do they know what's happening? No, I admitted. We're not close. Do you want to tell them? I thought about the kids in that ICU, about my brother, grinning in front of banners, crowing about being the king of smoke, about my parents bragging that nobody's ever gotten sick from our food whenever I tried to talk about safe temperatures. I want them to be held accountable, I said slowly. If I call, it won't be to protect them. It'll be to give them a chance to do the right thing before the state forces them. She nodded. Then call as a daughter. We'll keep doing our jobs. That night, I dialed my parents' number for the first time in almost a year. My mother answered on the second ring, her voice warm and bright. Naomi, or are we supposed to still call you Rachel? Naomi is fine, I said tightly. I don't have a lot of time. I need to talk to you about the restaurant. If this is about you refusing to come home to help, your father already said, it's not. I cut in. Have you had any reports of people getting seriously sick after eating there? She hesitated. Well, there were a couple of complaints online. Your brother says it's just haters trying to drag his rating down. Why? My heart clenched. Because I'm working with a company that tracks disease outbreaks, and we've identified a cluster that points directly to Carter Smokehouse. People are in the hospital, Mom. Kids. There was a long silence, then a scoff. My father's voice appeared in the background. Is that Naomi? Put me on speaker. A click. Then his blunt tone filled my tiny Seattle kitchen. You're accusing your own family's business of poisoning people now? After everything we've done to build this from nothing? I'm not accusing, I said carefully. I'm telling you what the data says. You need to shut down, at least temporarily, and cooperate with the health inspectors. Clean everything, retrain staff, check your suppliers. If you're proactive, you might avoid. We're not shutting down, he snapped. Do you have any idea what that would do to our reputation? To your brother's bookings? We've got a city festival coming up. He's the headliner. This is his moment. There it was again. His moment. Not the kids in the ICU. Not the dozens of hospitalized customers. His moment. If you don't, I said quietly. The state will force you. They already have our reports. This isn't just me calling as your daughter. It's a warning from someone who actually understands how bad this can get. My brother's voice crashed into the call then, loud and incredulous. Is this seriously about you being mad we didn't come to your little ceremony? You're gonna sabotage my company over hurt feelings? It was a doctorate, I snapped, finally losing my calm. And I'm not sabotaging anything. I'm trying to stop people from getting hurt. He laughed, bitter and disbelieving. You always did think your books and numbers were more important than real life. Real life? I echoed. Real life is a mother sitting next to her kid's hospital bed because you didn't want to check your meat thermometer. Enough, my father barked. We are not discussing this. You do whatever you have to do for your job, and we'll do what we have to do for our business. But don't expect us to thank you if you help drag our name through the mud. The line went dead. I stood there, phone pressed to my ear, listening to nothing. Have you ever watched someone choose their ego over the easiest chance to fix everything? That was the night I stopped hoping my family would ever be the people I needed. The next morning, I contacted a public interest law firm that specialized in whistleblower cases. If the Carters wanted a war between data and denial, they were about to learn what happens when you underestimate the quiet kid who used to refill the sauce bottles while you took all the credit. The state moved faster than my parents ever believed they would. Within 2 weeks, inspectors had quietly visited multiple Carter smokehouse locations, taken samples, interviewed staff, and connected more lab results. The outbreak, once a cluster of red dots on my screen, was officially declared. Local news stations ran segments warning people who had eaten at Carter Smokehouse to monitor for symptoms. My brother responded the way he always did, with swagger. He posted a video standing in front of the flagship restaurant, apron on, grill flaming behind him. We take food safety extremely seriously at Carter Smokehouse, he said, flashing his TV smile. We feed our own family here. Don't believe everything you see on the news. Haters are gonna hate, but we're not going anywhere. Thousands of likes. Heart emojis. Tell him, chef. Comments. I watched the clip from my office in Seattle, a bitter taste in my mouth. My manager paused by my desk. Health department wants us to keep monitoring social chatter, she said. There's talk the company's trying to spin this as a smear campaign. Of course they are, I muttered. The timing of the next event felt like a sick joke. A week after that video, my mother sent a message to my personal email with the subject line, Thanksgiving? Inside she wrote, We know things have been tense, but family is family. Why don't you come home for Thanksgiving? It'd be good PR too. Show everyone we're united. Ethan's hosting a huge community cookout that day instead of a traditional dinner. City officials will be there. Reporters, bloggers. Big opportunity. Come support your brother. Maybe we can talk. I must have read that email 20 times. Good PR. Not, we miss you. Not, we're scared about this outbreak and we're sorry we didn't listen. They wanted to use my presence, my doctorate, my shiny new life as a prop in their redemption tour. Part of me wanted to hit delete and never look back. Another part, the part that had changed her name and moved across the country, recognized an opening. If you want people who built their empire on public image to finally face the truth, what better place than a stage they created for themselves? I wrote back, I'll be there. Thanksgiving Day, the sky over my hometown was a flat, cold gray, the kind that made smoke hang low over the streets. I hadn't been back since the graduation fiasco. Walking up to Carter Smokehouse felt like stepping into a time capsule. Same red-checked tablecloths, same neon pig sign, same smell of hickory and spice. But there were new things too. Banners about commitment to safety, hand sanitizer stations, staff wearing branded gloves. All theater, with no mention of the hospitalizations that had forced these changes. My brother spotted me from the makeshift stage set up in the parking lot. He wore a custom chef's coat with his name stitched in cursive. "Naomi, you made it." He boomed into the mic, pulling me into a side hug. "Everyone, this is my sister, the doctor. She's here to show that real science is on our side." The crowd clapped politely. I stepped back, the urge to roll my eyes nearly uncontrollable. My mother fluttered behind him, whispering, "Just smile, honey. Let people take pictures. This is important for us." "Is it important for the families in the ICU?" I asked quietly. Her face tightened. "You really are determined to ruin this, aren't you?" "No," I said. "I'm determined to tell the truth." The event began like a twisted festival. Free samples, live music, local officials shaking hands, news cameras circling. My brother strutted, tossing phrases like unfounded allegations and "we passed all our inspections" into every interview. I watched, arms folded, until my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "We're here. 10 minutes." It was from the state health investigator I'd been coordinating with through the law firm. We'd provided data, timelines, and internal documentation showing that Carter Smokehouse had been warned and chose to keep operating at full capacity anyway. When the health department decided to serve official shutdown orders, they asked, "Do you want to be present?" I said yes, not for revenge porn, not for drama, but because I needed my family to see my face when the consequences of their choices finally caught up. 10 minutes later, the music cut out mid-song. A small cluster of officials in suits and state-branded jackets walked toward the stage, flanked by cameras. The crowd murmured, confused. My brother's smile flickered. Looks like we've got some special guests," he joked weakly. The lead investigator stepped up to the mic, holding a folder thick with papers. "Good afternoon," she said. "I'm here on behalf of the State Health Department, after a comprehensive investigation into the recent multi-jurisdictional outbreak of E. coli and Salmonella. We have determined that Carter Smokehouse is a primary source. Effective immediately, all Carter Smokehouse locations are ordered to cease operations pending further notice. Failure to comply will result in additional fines and potential criminal charges." You could feel the air get sucked out of the parking lot. People gasped. Someone shouted, "My kid got sick here." Another voice yelled, "I knew it." My mother went pale. "There must be some mistake," she stammered, pushing toward the investigator. "We're a family business. We would never—" The woman's expression didn't soften. "Ma'am, we have lab results, employee testimony, and documented warnings that went unheeded." She glanced past my mother directly at me. "We also have independent analytic reports that helped us track this quickly. Thanks to those, we may have prevented additional hospitalizations." My brother turned on me like a storm. "You did this," he hissed. No microphone now, just raw fury. "You brought them here." "No," I said calmly, my voice steady in a way it had never been at family dinners. "Your food safety practices brought them here. I just refused to look away." "We're your family," my mother cried. "How could you side with strangers over us?" I looked at the crowd, the parents holding kids close, the reporters scribbling, the staff whispering among themselves. "Those strangers trusted you not to poison them," I said. "You treated that trust like it was disposable. You skipped my doctorate for a barbecue, and now your barbecue is the reason someone else's child might never graduate from anything." For once, there was no quick comeback. "No, you're being dramatic. No, stop exaggerating." Just 3 Carters on a stage, finally outnumbered by the truth. The fallout was exactly what my parents had been terrified of, and exactly what they had chosen by ignoring every warning. Within weeks, Carter Smokehouse was all over the news, and not for my brother's famous brisket. Headlines screamed about beloved local chain linked to outbreak, families demanding justice, and Years of ignored safety complaints. As more employees came forward, stories ripped through the illusion of family values. Managers ordered to serve meat that hadn't reached safe temperatures, pressure to keep the line moving even when staff noticed spoiled product. Corners cut on cleaning to save money. Civil suits piled up. The health department levied fines so steep they might as well have been demolition charges. My brother lost his sponsorship deals, his TV cooking segment, his food festival bookings. Awards that had once been displayed inside glass cases on the restaurant wall were quietly packed away when organizers revoked them under ethical review. My parents had to sell 2 of the 3 houses they'd bought during the boom years just to cover legal fees. If you're waiting for me to say I felt satisfied watching all that, here's the complicated truth. I didn't feel the simple, gloating revenge high you get in movies. What I felt was something deeper and heavier, a grim relief that the universe was finally operating on a logic I understood. Actions had consequences, ignored warnings had costs. My data had never just been numbers on a screen, they were people's lives. And now everyone could see that. The whistleblower case went through quietly behind the scenes. Because I had documented everything properly and disclosed my conflict of interest early, I wasn't just protected. I was eligible for a portion of the penalties collected from the company as a result of our early detection. One day, an email arrived from the law firm with a number so large I blinked 3 times before accepting it was real. It was more money than I had ever imagined having in my own name. Not my brother's, not my parents', mine. I thought about buying a fancy car or some dramatic symbol of success. Instead, I did something that would have made teenage Rachel cry from disbelief. I started a nonprofit, the Line Cook Project, a foundation offering free food safety training, legal resources, and whistleblower support for low-wage restaurant workers who noticed dangerous practices but were terrified to speak up. We partnered with Northwatch to make our educational material data-driven and accessible. We ran workshops in multiple states. We helped workers file anonymous complaints when their managers told them to serve pink chicken or skip sanitizer refills. We made noise where silence had once kept people sick. The irony wasn't lost on me. The same empire that had treated me like unpaid labor was now funding a movement to protect other workers from bosses like my family. My parents tried to call a few times. At first, I let the calls go to voicemail. My mother's messages swung between anger and begging. "How could you do this to us?" Became, "We're still your parents." Became, "We just want to talk." My father left one message that chilled me. "You destroyed your brother. Are you happy now, doctor? You always were too big for this family." I didn't call back. What could I possibly say that reality hadn't already shown them? Months later, I received a letter in the mail, actual paper with my name written in my mother's looping handwriting, Dr. Naomi Lane. Inside, she wrote that they were closing the original Carter smokehouse indefinitely, that they'd lost almost everything, that my brother wasn't speaking to anyone, was drinking too much, was saying the world had turned on him. Finally, in one line scrawled near the bottom, she admitted, "Maybe we should have listened to you earlier. Maybe we should have gone to your graduation." I sat with that letter for a long time, not because it healed anything. It didn't. There was no real apology, no understanding of the years they'd spent treating me like a backup singer in the Ethan Carter show, but because it confirmed what I had needed to know since I stepped into that bathroom stall in my doctoral gown. I had been right to choose myself. Eventually, I wrote back a short note. "I'm sorry for the pain everyone is going through. I never wanted people to get hurt, but they were already being hurt. I chose to stand with them instead of protecting a lie. I hope one day you understand that. I am open to conversations that are honest and take responsibility. I am not open to pretending none of this happened. Naomi." I didn't hear back, and for the first time in my life, The silence didn't feel like punishment. It felt like peace. Here's the lesson I wish someone had told me when I was 18, scrubbing sauce off restaurant tables and dreaming of something bigger. Blood is not a free pass to hurt you without consequence. Family is not a magic word that erases harm. Love that demands you stay small is not love. It's control. Your worth is not measured by how loudly your parents cheer at your milestones, or whether your siblings' achievements are louder than yours. Your worth is in the quiet persistence of your effort, the integrity of your choices, and the courage it takes to walk away when staying means betraying yourself or others. I didn't burn my family's empire down out of spite. I turned on the lights in a kitchen they insisted was spotless, even as people got sick at their tables. In doing so, I finally stepped out of the smoke and into my own life. So if you're listening to this and thinking about all the ways you've been made to feel invisible, at dinners where your plate is empty while everyone praises somebody else, at graduations where no one shows up for you, at jobs where your ideas are used but your name is left off the credits, hear this. You are allowed to stop chasing people who refuse to see you. You are allowed to choose your own last name, your own city, your own mission. You are allowed to say, I won't keep quiet just because we share DNA. And if anyone ever tells you you're being dramatic for demanding basic respect, remember this. The people who benefit from your silence will always call your truth an overreaction. Speak it anyway. Someone's life might depend on it, especially your own. Thank you for listening. I'll be honest, I really respect Naomi. She didn't just sit in her pain and stay the forgotten daughter forever. She used her education, her skills, and her backbone to protect innocent people, even when it meant standing against her own family. That's not cruelty, that's courage. She didn't ruin their lives for fun. She simply refused to stay silent while others were getting hurt. Now, I want to hear from you. If you were in Naomi's place, would you have exposed the restaurant or stayed quiet for family loyalty? And have you ever had to choose between doing the right thing and keeping the peace with someone you love? Tell me your story in the comments.